Hey guys, Stevie here wanting to say congratulations. You've made it to the last steps of laser cutting. This is it. This is the final video. In this video, I'll be talking about the different tools on the UCP and how to use them all. So at this point, you have a random little name tag floating in space. Let's get our bearings straight. So right now, the entire space is a projection of the bed. So wherever this picture is on the bed is where the image will be cut. So you're going to want to move this image to be somewhere around where your material is, because it wouldn't make sense to just cut something randomly in the middle of the bed if your material is, say, maybe up in this upper right hand or upper left hand corner. So just keep that in mind. So hopefully by now you have your material set up in one of the corners and you've already set up the Z-axis. If not, watch the video setting up the laser cutter earlier in the playlist. It should be the first video. In order to move the image effectively, you need to know how the different tools work. So we'll start off with the zoom tool. The zoom tool allows you to focus and zoom onto the center of where your mouse is pointed. It can only zoom in, which is a little weird, but it's nice to know that the mouse scroll can do the exact same thing, zooming in and out, without actually having to use the zoom tool. So I'll show you what I mean. So if you're in any of these other tools, you can just zoom in and out with the scroll wheel and effectively do the same thing. But yeah, you can go really closely, so you can see here that we can have pretty precise precision when we're trying to move stuff around. So that's basically the zoom tool in a nutshell. I wouldn't really use it since you have the mouse wheel wherever you're pointed. You can do the exact same thing, but just remember it exists. Now we're going to move on to the two other tools here, Focus View and Relocate View, and I'm going to talk about them together because they're often used together. So right now we have our image right here in the center of the cutting bed. Well, we know that if we use the Focus View tool, we can physically see that this picture isn't going to cut on the bed, and this is how we can tell this. So what Focus View allows us to do is it allows us to manually control where the laser is at any given moment before we actually start the cut. So we can see here wherever I'm moving the mouse is coordinates for where the laser can be. So if I click here, we can see that I just moved the laser to this position right here. So wherever this circle with an X inside is, that's where the laser currently is. And if I move the laser to where right now the picture is, we can see that it is nowhere near the material, so we need to fix that. So that's what the Relocate View tool will be for. So what the Relocate View allows us to do is actually move this tool or this picture to where it needs to be. So we know our picture is in the top right corner here, and so we'll move this picture to the top right corner, and using the Focus View tool we can actually see if our picture is actually on our material by tracing this image right now. And if you lift the hatch, you can actually see the red dot. So I'll do that right now. And then I'll scroll down here, go to the right, and up again. And we can see that the image does indeed fit on the material. Now, there's a more accurate way to do this. So say that I actually wanted this picture to be cut on the top left side of the material instead of the top right side. Well, that's not too much of a problem. What I can do is I can use the Focus View to scroll over to where I know the top left of the image is, and again you can lift the hatch and see where the red dot is, and then when I see it's in the top left corner of this piece of material, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to Relocate View, and we have this idea of reference points again. So we have 9 reference points to choose from, basically every part of the picture, and I know that the top left corner of my picture needs to be exactly where the laser is right now. So what we can do is we can specify the top left corner of the laser point, or the top left reference point, and then hit to pointer. And what just happened is the entire picture snapped to where the top left corner of the laser actually is, which is what we want. So now if we trace this image using Focus View, we can see that now this image is in the top right corner of the the top left corner of the material that we're trying to cut. And we can do this for any of these reference points. So say that instead of cutting on the top left part of the material, we can cut on the bottom left part. So we want to specify the bottom left reference point, find wherever the bottom left of the material is, and then we can again go back to Relocate View and hit to pointer. So once you have a good idea of where you want your picture to be, and you've traced it and can see that yes, this picture does fit on the material that I'm trying to cut and this is where I want it, you always want to be mindful of two things. One, you want to make sure that you put the image at a location where you can still use the rest of the material if anybody needs to use the material. If it's not your own material, you want to be sure to cut in a location where the material can still be salvaged for future cuts. So you don't want to just put this picture right in the middle of the material, because people then might not be able to use it. So just be mindful of that. And two, once you found the location that you want your material to be, so let's say I snap the picture to be in the top right corner like this. Once I know that yes, this is exactly where I want my material to be, assuming that you lined up your material to be on one of the corners of the bed, you can always save the same exact location of this engraving and cut for future reference. So what I mean is, so right now we have the material in the top right corner of the bed. So what we can do is say we can save these coordinates right here for the top right reference point. So if we save these coordinates right here, then what happens is say that later on you realize that you want to engrave this part separately, and you want to make sure that the images in this name tag come out darker than they were last time. But you hit print and this picture appeared right over here. So if you had saved those coordinates, you can input those coordinates to be what they just were. And I don't remember what they were completely, but you can input them again. And if you save those exact coordinates, then you can just snap that picture to where it just was. So you can get the precise engraving again without having to worry about lining everything up perfectly. So just be mindful of that. And that's about it for the Focus View tool and the Relocate View tool. Alright? So next up we'll be talking about the Duplicate View tool. While most people duplicate their image to be cut on Illustrator, you can also duplicate the exact same image you're trying to cut within the UCP. It's a little finicky, but you can duplicate the exact image you're working with in either the X or Y direction, except it's a little weird because it actually is multiplicative, in which the X and Y are kind of like rows and columns. So if you increase the quantity in the X direction and the Y direction, this is a scale factor of 4. So when you hit apply, you're going to have 4 whole name tags instead of just 1. So that's just nice to know. So if whatever the quantity is in the horizontal, the X direction, and the vertical direction, multiply those together, and you'll get the total amount of name tags that you'll have. And it only duplicates so long as you have space on the cutting bed here. So you can't just keep going all the way to 10. It won't let you because you only have 18 inches of height to work with here, and you may not have that much of material. So you may be wondering if everything's multiplicative, then how are you supposed to have singular name tags? Like maybe you don't want this many name tags, you only want it up to here, or maybe your material is too short. It can handle, let's say, all of these name tags, say, other than this one. Well, how would you fix that? So you can actually just delete singular little name tags here by just clicking on one of them, and then just get deleted. And if you want to bring it back, you just click again and it comes back. But you can also mess with displacement here. So you can decrease the displacement, and you'll see that everything is much closer together. So it's not too bad of a tool to use. It's Illustrator gives you a little bit more accuracy, but this would be a quick, sure-hand way to duplicate things if you just realized that you wanted a little more than what you had over in the UCP and you didn't want to go over to Illustrator and reprint. So this would just be a fast way to do that. But that's basically how the Duplicate View tool works. So yeah, that's all I got for that. Finally, we have the Estimate View tool, and that will actually tell you precisely how long the cut or engraving will take with the current settings as they are. If you change the settings, be sure to run the Estimate View tool again. It's always good to do this as you can always let users know about how long this cut's going to take, so people know how long they need to wait if they need to leave and go do something when they should be back and stuff like that. So we'll demonstrate it with the Duplicate View tool. So currently, with this many name tags that you wanted to cut out, this would take a pretty substantial time, as you can see, because it's basically the entire cutting bed. So this whole thing would take about an hour and 11 minutes. While if we cut this down quite a bit, all the way down to just one name tag, this would only take 4 minutes and 23 seconds. And you're always greeted with that little tone. It's a little weird, but it's always nice. And then you can also change the settings here. So say that you decrease the speed that the engraver or the raster would go, and you hit apply and OK. You'll see that the time also goes up here in just a second. And then you can do the same thing with the vector cut. So just remember to always try to estimate how long the cut's going to take before you do something, especially if you think it's going to take a long time, or if you know someone's going to take a long time rather than somebody taking a short time. You may want to allow the person who has a shorter cut to go first. And this is a way you can always just check to see how long a cut's going to take, so just be mindful of that. Once you have your image placed exactly as you want it and you've gone through all the steps that I just talked about, you know exactly how long this is going to take. The last thing you want to do is you want to double check your settings to make sure that this is what you want. I saved this from a different kind of cut, so I actually want this to be just a little different. You can do some last minute tweaks and that's totally fine. So I'll do 85 and 85 or something like that. Hit apply and hit OK. And estimate view again to see just how long it'll take. Once you're ready and everything's done, you set the Z-axis and everything looks okay. The last thing you have to do is just hit this play button right here. When you hit that play button, the cut will physically start, and it'll usually do the raster cuts first and then the vector cuts. But after 4 minutes and 23 seconds, you'll finally have a final finished cut. But say you run into the problem where you have your engraving settings done, but it didn't vector cut all the way through. Like the piece of wood is still stuck into the rest of the material. Well, what you can do is you can go back into settings after this entire cut finishes. You can highlight the black color because you don't want to engrave again because you don't want it to be too deep. You can go over to mode here, hit skip, hit set, apply, and OK. So now what that basically means is only the vector cut will now run based on the mode, and you hit OK. And then when you hit estimate job completion, you'll see that it only lasts 12 seconds, and you can keep going through the vector cut over and over again up until you have that piece of material cut out. And once again, just to reiterate, you can always go back to vector here and increase the throughput. If it's still just not enough, hit apply and OK. And you can also slowly decrease the speed on the red vector cut. So just remember all of those things, and you should be on your way to a very good laser cut. And that's it. That's everything that you need to do to have one exact laser cut. You're done. Congratulations. Thanks for stopping by on my video series, and I hope I was able to help out.